You know that feeling when you walk into a room where two people have just been arguing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Even if they're just sitting there in total silence, the air just feels, I don't know, heavy, thick.
You can almost taste the tension. It's visceral.
Right. So imagine that exact feeling, but, scale it up. Not a room, but the entire planet. That's the hook for the deep dive we're jumping into today.
We're looking at a source that argues this. This collective anxiety we all feel isn't just modern stress. It's a symptom of something much, much bigger.
It's a really fascinating and, I'll be honest, a pretty intense read.
It is. We are unpacking Armageddon 2028, Global Awakening and the Golden Age by Vahid Zakavati.
And before anyone hits the panic button because of that A word in the title, Armageddon, we should probably clarify the mission here.
Good idea.
This isn't your standard geopolitical forecast. We are not looking at troop movements or stock market charts today.
No, this is a completely different lens.
Wait.
Zakavati's premise is that Armageddon has been, well, profoundly misunderstood.
Yeah.
We think of Hollywood movies, asteroids, nuclear winter,
The end of the world.
Right. But this book reframes it as a frequency shift. He's arguing it's an evolutionary leap in human DNA that just looks like chaos on the surface.
Which is a bold claim. It's basically saying, don't look at the explosion, look at what's being born from it. So here's the plan. We're going to walk through Zakavati's very specific timeline, why he circles the year 2028 as this explosion point. We'll look at his esoteric explanation for the conflict in the Middle East, and then the part I found most compelling.
The frequency war.
The idea of a frequency war happening inside the human mind.
And just a quick disclaimer before we dive in. We're acting as your guides through this specific text. It combines prophecy, astrology, metaphysics. So we aren't here to endorse these claims as fact or, take any political sides, but to really explore the world this author has built.
Exactly. We're stepping into his reality for a bit. So let's start with the where. The book focuses a lot on a very specific patch of dirt in the Middle East, the plain of Megiddo.
Right. Which is, historically significant because Megiddo in Hebrew is the root of the word Armageddon. But Zakavati asks a great question. Why there? Why does history keep circling back to this one tiny geographical area? Why not the Amazon? Or, I don't know, Antarctica?
And his answer isn't about oil or shipping routes or any of the usual stuff.
No, not at all. He's talking about ley lines.
Okay, for those who might not be familiar with that term, can we break that down? Because it sounds a little bit like something out of a fantasy novel.
Sure. Think of ley lines as the Earth's nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe a better analogy is acupuncture meridians.
Okay.
The idea is that just like our bodies have energy channels, the Earth has these energetic veins running through it.
Yeah.
And the claim in the book is that Megiddo isn't just a battlefield, it's a major energy knot, a trigger point for the whole planet.
Which leads to this really visceral metaphor he uses. He compares the conflict there to a kind of planetary surgery.
Yes, the detox metaphor. It's a provocative way to frame it. He argues the Earth is a living entity that has accumulated thousands of years of what he calls karmic infection.
Karmic infection. So like oppression, bloodshed, all that heavy negative energy.
Exactly. And just like a boil needs to be lanced to drain the infection, he says the Earth needs a physical discharge point.
So in this view, the chaos we see on the news isn't random. It's not just people making bad decisions.
He would argue it's a necessary, albeit incredibly painful, immune response. If the infection stays in, the patient, in this case, Earth dies. The conflict is the release valve.
Wow.
And he layers this with what he calls astrology facts.
This is where it got a bit technical, but I think it's crucial for understanding the why. He mentions the intersection of the Mars line and the Saturn line.
Right. So in astrocartography, which studies how planetary lines affect places on Earth, Megiddo supposedly sits right where Mars energy and Saturn energy cross.
And archetypally, what are we dealing with there? What do those mean?
Well, Mars is the god of war, action, fire, aggression. Saturn is the lord of karma, restriction, time, structure.
So you have the irresistible force of war meeting the immovable object of karma.
That's a perfect way to put it. The author claims that when heavy planets move through the sign of Aries, which Mars rules, it activates this specific geographic trigger.
It's like striking a match in a room filled with gas.
Precisely. It releases all that stored historical pressure. The geography itself is designed to amplify the conflict so the karma can be, burned off.
Okay, so that explains the location. It's the planet's chimney for all the smoke.
Yeah.
But the title of the book is Armageddon 2028. That's a very specific date. Why 2028? Is he predicting the world ends on a Tuesday in November?
No, no, it's not a single day. He describes it more as a singularity or a peak in a much longer process. The timeline actually starts around 2024 and runs through 2030.
And he calls this period the dark tunnel.
He does.
That's reassuring. Welcome to the dark tunnel. Please keep your hands inside the vehicle.
It's meant to describe a birth canal. You're in the dark, you're compressed under pressure, but you're moving towards something. He also calls it a time of west screening.
West screening. That sounds like a TSA checkpoint. What does that mean?
It roughly translates to a great filtration, a sifting. The idea is that all the old systems, banking, government, social structures, are collapsing because, as he puts it, their roofs are rotten.
I love that image. You can't just patch the roof anymore. The whole house has to come down.
Exactly. If the foundation is built on old energy, it can't hold the new frequency. So the economic instability, the social unrest, these aren't bugs in the system, they're features of the collapse.
They're birth pangs.
They're birth pangs. And again, he ties this to a cosmic clock. The major player here is the planet Saturn entering the sign of Aries between 2027 and 2029.
We're back to Aries again.
We are. Saturn in Aries is a tough placement. Saturn wants order. Aries wants to break things. It's a clash. But the real key, according to the author, is the angle Saturn makes to Pluto, which is now in Aquarius.
We hear so much about Pluto and Aquarius in these circles. Can we just create a simple mental model for what that actually represents?
Sure. Think of Pluto as the planet of deep transformation, death and rebirth. And Aquarius represents the network, the people, the collective.
Okay.
So Pluto in Aquarius is, in essence, power shifting from the hierarchy to the network.
The top-down pyramid crumbling into a flat network.
Exactly. And Zakavati argues that this alignment in 2028 signals the total collapse of that old order because the energy just won't support vertical hierarchies anymore. It becomes a battle for human identity. And he says 2028 is the point where lies can no longer hide.
That was a recurring theme, the end of secrets.
It's the idea that the vibrational shift will be so intense that deception becomes, well, physically impossible to maintain. Corruption, hidden agendas, secret deals, they all get forced out into the light.
Which sounds great in theory, but in practice, that is going to be incredibly chaotic. If every single secret comes out at once, that's not a peaceful transition. That's every government scandal, every corporate cover-up, all at once.
Not peaceful at all. He describes it as a massive shock, a stripping away of masks. For those who are deeply attached to their power or their public image, 2028 is a nightmare. But for those seeking truth, he frames it as liberation.
This actually bridges us perfectly to the next section, which I think is the real core of the whole book. We've talked about geography and timelines, but Zakavati says the real war isn't happening in the Middle East.
No, this is part 3, the war of frequencies.
He argues the conflict is actually happening inside our own heads.
This is his core thesis. He says that fighting a country or a neighbor is just a distraction. The true war is against the frequency of fear itself.
We talk about the attention economy in tech all the time, companies fighting for your eyeballs, but he's taking that concept to a completely metaphysical level.
He is. He describes what he calls invisible armies and control systems. The claim is that news cycles, crises, constant threats, they're engineered to keep human beings locked in a state of survival.
Fight or flight.
Precisely. Because when you're in survival mode, you are vibrating at the frequency of fear. And biologically, when you're in fear, your higher cognitive functions, they just shut down. You can't access empathy, creativity, or, in his view, higher spiritual dimensions.
So the theory is, where your attention goes, your energy flows. If I'm glued to the news about a disaster, I'm physically feeding that disaster with my energy.
That's the claim. It's a closed loop. The low vibration news is designed to turn you into a receiver for fear. You become an antenna for it.
It's a bit Matrix-y, isn't it? The idea that we're basically batteries powering a system we don't even understand.
Very Matrix-like. But he offers a solution. He says the way to fight this war isn't to go out and protest, but to stop acting like a receiver.
Tune into the silence of the heart, which sounds like something you'd see on a yoga studio wall, but he means it, like, tactically.
He does. He also mentions that signals from the galactic center are, right now, activating dormant DNA.
Okay, hang on. Dormant DNA. That's a heavy term. What's the mechanism there?
He doesn't give us the biology textbook version, obviously, but the concept is that human beings are in the middle of an evolutionary upgrade. We're coming online to a higher capacity, maybe telepathy, higher intuition. And the war is the old guard trying to jam that signal with noise so we stay asleep.
So turning off the news isn't just self-care in this worldview.
No, it's strategic spiritual warfare. You are denying the enemy your energy. You are refusing to vibrate at the frequency they can control.
That is certainly an empowering way to look at doom scrolling. It makes putting your phone down feel like an act of rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
But let's play this out. We have the internal battle, the 2028 timeline. What does the actual transition look like? Does the book give us scenarios? Because global awakening sounds nice, but getting there sounds rough.
He offers a few scenarios, ranging from catastrophic to miraculous. Scenario A is your standard physical collapse, earthquakes, pole shifts, the planet physically shaking off the old structures.
Standard apocalypse ping, though. We've all seen those movies.
Right. But scenario B is the one that really caught my attention. He calls it divine intervention, but it's very specific. He suggests a change in the laws of physics.
But change in physics. Like gravity stops working.
Or like combustion stops working. Or electronics fail. He suggests a scenario where advanced weaponry simply ceases to function.
You pull the trigger and nothing happens.
Exactly. And he ties this to the planet Uranus moving into Gemini from 2026 to 2033.
Okay, break that down for us. Uranus is the planet of...
Sudden, shocking change, disruption, the lightning bolt, and Gemini rules communication, the air, connectivity. So the interpretation is that this transit could literally hack our technology.
Mm-hmm.
If the satellites go down and the missiles won't fire, humanity is forced into a return to essence.
If your smartphone and your gun don't work, you're just left with yourself.
Yeah.
And your neighbor.
You're left with your spirit. And that leads to his description of the golden age that follows. This is the morning after.
So paint that picture for us, because usually post-apocalyptic stories are all dust and zombies.
This is the opposite. He describes a high vibration reality. And here's the kicker, the part that really sets this book apart. He claims that in this new reality, low vibration entities physically cannot exist.
Cannot exist. Like they just vaporize.
The phrasing he uses is that they cannot breathe in the new atmosphere. It's as if the energetic environment itself becomes toxic to deceit.
That is a radical concept. It implies the environment itself becomes an immune system against greed and corruption.
Precisely. A self-cleaning system. He predicts a move toward telepathy. Because if you can't lie, language becomes less necessary. And clean energy based on spirit, not burning matter.
It sounds like a utopia, but it implies that a lot of people simply won't be there.
That is the dark implication, yes.
Right.
It's a filtration. He connects this to the Great Awakening era, driven by that Pluto-Neptune alignment. A civilization built on energetic purity.
This brings us to the practical side. Because usually when people talk about 2028 or the end, the very next sentence is, buy my freeze-dried food, or buy gold.
Right. Get a bunker in New Zealand.
Exactly. And Zakavati explicitly addresses this in his FAQ. He basically says, put down the beans.
He argues that physical preparation is actually a trap. If you're hoarding food and ammo, you're preparing for a reality of fear. You are betting on the collapse, so you are energetically feeding the collapse.
So what are we supposed to hoard?
You hoard love and awareness.
Which is much harder to stack in the garage.
Much harder. But his logic is consistent. If the war is vibrational, your shield is your vibration. He gives specific advice. Control your reaction to the news. Do not vibrate with fear. And he talks about children.
Yes, I found that part comforting.
He claims children are naturally protected because their vibration is naturally high. They haven't been conditioned into the fear matrix yet. They are already tuned to the new frequency.
So the advice is, don't worry about saving them, learn from them.
Mm-hmm. And he had a really interesting point about money. We always hear buy gold when the economy crashes.
Right.
Zakavati says even gold is part of the old world. He claims that in the golden age, the currency will be service and consciousness.
So your bank balance is determined by how much you help others.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Value shifts from what you have to what you are. And this all ties into what he calls the dopamine shift.
This felt very modern. What's the dopamine shift?
He argues that we are currently addicted to cheap, worldly dopamine likes on social media, buying things, the drama of the news cycle. That's junk food for the soul.
Mm-hmm.
The goal of his survival guide is to detox from that and switch to the real dopamine of spiritual power.
The thrill of liberation.
Right. He's saying we are addicted to the matrix, and we have to be willing to go through withdrawals to get to the real world. It's about finding joy in silence, in connection, rather than in consumption.
It's like he's offering a five-course meal, but we have to be willing to put down the bag of stale chips first.
And walk through a fire to get to the table.
Just a minor detail.
A minor detail.
So let's zoom out. We've gone from the ley lines of Megiddo through the cosmic timeline of 2028, the frequency war in our minds, and finally to this practical guide of, well, spiritual survival. It's a lot.
It is a heavy stack of concepts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you strip away the specific dates in the astrology for a moment, the core message is actually quite empowering.
How so?
Zakavati is trying to shift the reader's perspective from being a victim of a disaster to being a divine collaborator.
A collaborator, I like that. It implies agency.
Exactly. He frames the chaos not as a tragedy we have to suffer through, but as a restoration project.
Yeah.
A massive, messy renovation. And he's inviting the reader to pick up a hammer, or in this case, a higher frequency, and get to work.
It changes the narrative from the world is ending to the world is beginning.
And that subtle shift changes how you act. If you think the world is ending, you panic and hoard. If you think it's beginning, you prepare. You clean up. You get ready to build.
It really challenges the way we consume the world around us. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Whether you buy into the prophecies of 2028 or not, there's a provocative thought here that I think is worth chewing on.
What's that?
If the author is right, even just partially, and the war isn't out there, but is actually just a battle for your attention and your emotional state, what would happen if you simply changed the channel right now?
If you stopped engaging with the fear.
Exactly. If the enemy is distraction, maybe the most radical act of rebellion is just peace.
That is a powerful thought to leave on.
Thanks for listening to the deep dive. We'll see you in the next one. Stay curious and maybe keep your vibration high.
Take care, everyone.